Hello, Kelly here with Kelly Soroka Life, and it is Friday, April 25th, and we are almost at the end. We are the next to the last day of this Aries New Moon cycle. So we are closing in. Tomorrow, I will have for you before the new moon on Sunday. So tomorrow on Saturday, I'll have for you a closing ceremony with some journal prompts and reflections, some things that you can do to close out this moon cycle and open up and get ready for the new moon cycle in Taurus. And so that's the beauty about witchcraft, about nature, about earth, about spirituality, is that it's always a cycle. There's always a time to start fresh. There's always a time to start new. And today, as we are closing out, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me, about the things that I believe in, about the reasons that I'm doing this challenge just for myself, and hopefully to spread it to other people as well. But I grew up in the Methodist Church, became a Catholic later in life, and then when several years ago, I went through a very tough time where I was dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, and just it was truly the dark night of the soul for me. I couldn't do the things that I was used to doing. I was homeschool. We were living on a farm. I was homeschooling my kids, and it was just, and all of a sudden, I was scared to do so many things, and I was having panic attacks going and doing things that I had been doing, all my life. And it was a very, very, very hard time. And it was, had been times in my life when I had gone through hard things, and I always seemed to have my faith. I knew there was more out there. I knew there was more beyond just the church and just Christianity, but I never really, and I had started, kind of putting feelers out there and doing other things outside of that realm. But when this happened to me, I knew that I needed more than just to pray and just to go to church and say, make this go away, because it was something that I needed to fix. It was very similar to if I had just broken my leg, I would not just, go to church and say, just fix my leg. I would pray about it, but I would also go to the doctor and have x-rays and have casts put on and, not walk on it for a while and do the things I need to heal. And I was going through a mental illness, something that was wrong with me, things that I was having thoughts that were not, that were keeping me from my life, keeping me from doing the things that I needed to do and I wanted to do. And so I knew that there was lots of things that needed to go into that. And so I started doing a lot of meditation, started doing a lot of mindfulness. I started, exploring all of those things like tarot and crystals and things that had always, fascinated me, but I'd never really gotten into. And so I started reading tarot. And I also, at the same time, went to my doctor, went to a counselor, started seeing a counselor, and went on medication for a while. And so I was doing all of these things, but the spiritual things, and so, the counseling is not, and, I only do that, when I need it now. And the medication, I don't feel like that I need at this point. But if there was ever a time when I felt like I needed something like that again, I definitely would do it and go back to counseling. But my spiritual practices are what ground me. They are what make my life um, worthwhile and make my soul sing. When I pick up a tarot deck and do a tarot reading, it fills my soul. It is something that just is just something that I know deep down inside is something that I'm meant to do. When I do crystal healing or Reiki healing, and I am a Reiki crystal healer certified, and I'm a Reiki master and teacher certified, and astrologer. And so just all of those things, all of those practices together and and communing with the spirits and talking with my ancestors and and getting in touch with the earth and going out and being with the earth and being in nature and all those things. I know that's what those things are, the things that make me happy. Those are the things that keep me happy and healthy and moving along and pushing myself along too. When I get to a point where I feel like that I need, that I'm dwelling on a shadow too much, or I am feeling bad about myself. These are tools that help me work through that, tools that help me get through anything that I'm going through, that help me to to be a better person, to be in touch with the divine, and however you kind of and however you might describe that to you. To me, the divine is just kind of that source, the source of the earth, the source of life, the source of death, the source of rebirth, all of those things. And the way that I connect to the divine is in many different ways. It is through crystals and tarot and my ancestors and the earth and all of those things, and through gods and goddesses. There's lots of gods and goddesses that I work with and I'll study with, and I think that a lot of the stories that I grew up with in Christianity are stories that came from other myths and legends and just were kind of put into Christianity and put into a different story. And then I felt like that Christianity was told to me that that was the only way that you could believe, that was the only way that you could talk to God, that that was the only way that you could be saved, that that was the only way that you could be a good person to follow the Ten Commandments. And I just don't believe that all of those things are necessarily true. I think a lot of it is stories because we don't know. We don't know. And as a human on earth, I don't think, we know collectively what happens before, what happens after. And so, our life is part of that. And it should be, something that gives us joy for that journey, and that also challenges us. I think we need to be challenged and to grow and to be able to um, to look at things in a new way. And all of those things help me to look at the world in new ways. Tarot helps me look at the world symbolically. Astrology helps me with cycles and patterns, and chakras help me have a kind of language to talk about the way that I'm feeling, the way my physical body's feeling, and my emotional body's feeling. And all of those things, help me to be a better person, to connect, be happy with who I am, but also, want to improve and want to be better, want to be a better person. And so that is why I'm, first of all, doing these videos, because I like to share all of these things that I've learned over these past several years, these new things that I've learned and brought into my spiritual practice, and becoming practicing, feeling like that my practice now is witchcraft, and wanting to really deepen that practice and bring the witchcraft that I really enjoy and that speaks to me out into the world and into my world and into the world around me, as much as I, feel called to do so. And so I also am offering tarot readings, astrology readings, Reiki healing sessions. I just now got my website set back up so that it is ready for you to see the things that I'm offering right now, the tarot readings that you can get, the astrology readings that you can get, Reiki healing if you want to do that. And I learned Reiki during COVID. And so I learned Reiki, through on Zoom. And so I am very good at distance healing and using crystals and things like that to help with the Reiki healing. And I do it in person as well. But for those of you who aren't close, then it is a great way to do a healing session. Tarot, like I said, it's just something that speaks to me. It is something that the tarot cards are just are so full of symbols. And I grew up reading. I read all the time and still do, and read just, a tremendous amount of books. And when I was in high school, had English teachers that I loved, and they taught me about literature and about symbolism and about how wonderful stories are. And so I went to college, majored in English, and was an English teacher for a while, and then homeschooled all of my children. So tarot speaks to that teaching, that symbolism, that passing on the story through literature and through storytelling. And astrology as well. Astrology is something that I've always been fascinated with, the planets and the stars, and how it gives you a way to a language, just like using your chakras is like kind of a language. Astrology to me is it's like a language that I can use to talk about things, because I talk about myself as, I have a Sagittarius rising, so a lot of these things, you know, are, like teaching and exploring and, wanting to put, my teachings and things out there and share these things. That is very much Sagittarius. And I have an Aries sun and a Capricorn moon, and, all of those things. I can talk about those things in that way by saying I have this Aries sun that, makes me impatient at times. But it's a way for me to work with that and say, okay, well, I know that it makes me impatient, and I know that it's going to hold me back sometimes in these areas. So how can I work with that to make it better? And that's what I feel like astrology is all about, and how that you can get an astrology reading, a tarot reading, a Reiki healing, and use that language to see where you are, see where you want to be, and we can work on it together. We can look at those things, look at the challenges that you're facing right now, and move together and move forward. So that's just a little bit about me. And I hope that, and your challenge is to today, leave me a comment, send me a message, an email, something that, so that I just know that you're out there and you can tell me a little something about you. And I would love to hear anything and everything about all of you that are out there. And so that's your challenge as we are winding down. And like I said, tomorrow I'll have a um a closing ceremony for you that I'll use some candles and some crystals and some herbs, and just have a nice little closing ceremony so we can close out this Aries new moon energy and get ready for the new moon in Taurus on Sunday. And that I'm going to do for the Taurus. I'm not going to do a challenge, an everyday video, but I will do several things during the week, and we're going to focus on crystals, because I want to start diving deeper into some of the practices that I do, and some of the things that kind of bringing the deeper witchcraft into people's lives and into my life, and sharing it with others. So we're going to do a deep dive on crystals. So I'll have a workbook for you just like this, with some journal pages and some things that you can do along with during the month, and things that we can do, readings, tarot readings, and spreads and prompts and things like that you can use. So look out for that on Sunday. We'll do an opening ceremony with the moon, and I'll talk about the things that I'm using for the month and for the cycle, and get started in our crystal work. So again, thank you. And if there's, anything that you would love to know more about, I'll leave some links below with getting to my website, getting with a chat with me, how to message me, all of those kinds of things down in the comments. And so you can see those and get in touch with me. And if you want to know anything more about any of these readings, about, how these readings can help you, please feel free to get in touch with me in any way that feels comfortable for you. And I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.